Martin? I can see the number of people in here, can I?
Yeah.
Where?
No, you can't. Why can you see next slide here?
Can you mute yourself, Martin?
Hello. Oh. Can you hear me, David?
Yeah.
Perfect. Cool. Sound test passed. I can see we still have a lot of people joining. I just tweeted to make more people aware of this. 1 second, and we'll get started right away in a few minutes and show you some exciting stuff that we've been working on. Bear with me.
Yeah, I was just checking. Yes.
All right, back with sound. So let's give it another 1-2 minutes. I see people joining on a frequent basis. Just so you're aware, for the people who are already logged in and have sound and can hear me well, we are now exploring a new tool called GoToWebinar, which allows us to do presentations a little bit more interactively. So there is a possibility to ask questions, to have a chat, and also polls. So thank you for experimenting this first session together with us. And if this works well, we're going to have many more and much more frequent ones as well. So I'd suggest let's give it our 3 minutes and then we'll kick off. The session will be recorded and you'll be able to share the link afterwards to your colleagues, friends, or whoever else might be interested in seeing this. I'll be right back with you. All right, great stuff. So I can see 50 attendees. Some of them are still joining, but bear in mind the session will be recorded, so you'll be able to see what you have missed and what you have not missed. You can see inadvertently some of the familiar faces who we've met at Connections, but also some new faces as well. So this is equally exciting to give you a little bit of an opportunity to tell you a bit more about Vizlib. So let's get started. So the occasion to this webinar is actually the Vizlib June 2018 release that we announced last week. And this is a little bit of a novelty because we haven't done this before in that extent. So that kind of prompted me to schedule the session to walk you through a little bit what this means to you and what new changes and updates have been introduced to Vizlib in the past couple of weeks. So the agenda today is to tell you a little bit more about this new release cycle, and then very exciting to tell you about the near latest addition to Vizlib, a Vizlib container that was introduced in May. I'm pretty sure you saw some of that in social media, but it's always different opportunity if I can showcase to you a little bit how it works, what our thoughts are behind this, and how we're trying to help you create better looking and much more efficient dashboards. Scatter Chart also has some changes as well, some interesting features developed by our talented developers. Bar Chart, and one thing that we're very, very, very proud of that actually took a lot of work, a lot of time, and we managed to release version 1 this Monday, which is a pivot table. So I'll showcase that as well, including what's next on the roadmap in the next 1-2 kind of months. So starting, before I kick off with the agenda itself, a couple of news. So for some of you who have attended the customer sessions, you knew that we were talking about this for a while. How-tos, tutorials, feature introductions with Vizlib. So we have created a YouTube channel. So far, only a couple of videos, but these are being added now on a weekly basis. The idea of this YouTube channel is naturally to be able to see, rather than having to experiment things yourself, to see some of the extensions and features in action. And more importantly, I presume, most of you are familiar with extensions in Click, but if somebody else wants to use a Vizlib extension, they usually come to you and kind of provide like a platform where people can self-train themselves, at least, on a high level. So that is now available. It's very easy. You just need to go to just YouTube, search for Vizlib. We should be the first hit at the top. Click on here. You see a couple of videos that we have already released. Make sure you subscribe, because then you get updates whenever we release something new. And once we have some quantity, we'll make sure to organize them into the individual extensions and then cross-link them from our website as well. So that's happening. Spread the word. Continuing from that, obviously, I'll mention that again. I'll mention that on a regular basis. We have a blog page on our website with regular blog posts written by our very talented content editor, Justa. These blog posts are typical around, focused always around ClickSense, around how-tos, experience deploying self-service. So some of these things might be very, very interesting to you. I always encourage you to have a read through them, because ultimately, it's all about maximizing your investment into ClickSense. At the same time, also, you see, we'll be announcing, the releases here as well, the library releases. So make sure you bookmark the website, vizlib.com/blog, and visit it regularly. So having said that, I'm now moving over to the interesting part, the latest updates. So, as I already highlighted at the beginning of the session, we have now introduced a Vizlib monthly library release cycle. And the reason we have done this is that, on one hand, we were very, very agile, quick to develop new extensions, new features, which most of you liked and enjoyed and admired. However, with quantity of extensions, we have 15 today. I appreciate some of you get lost. What's the latest version? What's new? What has been changed? And I understand it's difficult to keep track of these things. If you're on vacation for 3 weeks, Vizlib has added new releases, new extensions, and so on and so on. So to kind of like facilitate a little bit and to provide you with more transparency and overview, we decided to do the following. So we'll continue to release our extensions and features and bug fixes as and when are ready, as per the usual cycle. However, on top, every month we will do a snapshot where we will say, right, from today, compared to last month, we will collect all the changes that have been in our library and present them in one nicely organized blog post. So just to give you an idea, this is our blog page here, and if you go into the Vizlib June release, you can see that we are now, describing some general library updates that we have done. So, for example, we are compatible, for example, with June 2018, which was a very interesting exercise. At the same time, also, we've updated our whole library to be compatible with imprinting. So that's we're available with the June version of Vizlib as well. And then in a more detailed, you can see this is the change log. So these are the library updates, including a new extension. And then on individual level, on extension level, you see bug fixes, new features that have been added, and so on and so on. So that kind of hopefully makes it much easier for you to track what's up, what's changing, what's happening, and what is new. And if you then decide to go to your download portal, you always have the ability to continue downloading extensions as you know it, any version you want, or you can actually go here and say, right, to be conservatively, we're going to update once a month. Otherwise, it'll be a mess and nobody will keep track of, which version we are. So that's why you can stick to a specific version and then you can upgrade it whenever you want it ultimately. And we'll make sure these versions are also the most stable ones as well. Coming back to the presentation, and the reason we do this is more transparency, naturally, compatibility with ClickSense releases, right? So there's no more question. Vizlib June 2018 is compatible with ClickSense June, and so on. And very important, there's another very strong element that's happening, and that will be announced next week, super secret. But we will be together with Click announcing the Trusted Extension Development Program, which will be launching to accredit, or old word was certify, our extensions by Click. So we'll make sure that each month the full library, the full new features will be certified, and that'll be that particular snapshot. Just for your information, just again, if you want to download extension as they're released, you can still do so. You have both flexibility. But it's a very important step, and hopefully some of you will appreciate it. So coming to the first extension, I'll be surprised if not some of you have already used it, deployed it in production. It was one of the most interestingly also quickest of the extensions to develop for us in the time frame, but also very, very valuable, which is the Vizlib container. So the Vizlib container is, I mean, you understand the value immediately. It gives you the ability to organize your charts in much more efficiently and make sure you make most use of your real estate on your screen, right? And as such, we kind of spent a little bit of time and we managed to develop this for you. So that is now available here, and you drag and drop it. And what it does is it lists and it scans available master items that are available on the screen in the dashboard. So you need to specify your chart before as a master item. And there you have the ability to select from the ones that are available. And you see the icon, all right, this is a scatter chart, and you added it immediately. So you can then continue in the property panel. You can add a map if you wanted to. Let's take also, I think, a table here, and very quickly and easy. And that's the same thing as you can create, a container which hosts multiple charts in one specific view. Now, naturally with Vizlib, we didn't leave it at that. We obviously wanted to give you full power layout and configuration around it. So if you go to container settings, you see here that you can choose from different styles. You can either have it at tabs, standard, web view. You can have accordions, so you can then expand them as you move between them. Very important also, drop down, carousel. Some of you know this from a couple of tabloids where you flick between different pictures. You can use it as well for your container, or you can hide it altogether. Why? I'll come to that in a second. We also have different styling options, so you can go matte, you can change everything you want on the screen, the position, explore it yourself. We gave you full control, full flexibility, and it has actually been received very, very, very well so far. So it was one of the most fast adopting extensions. So that is here. So one thing that is very valuable here, and I want to make sure I emphasize this during this call, is that we have added 2 features here with our 3 actually extensions. So on the tabs here that you look at, you have the ability to specify actions. So if somebody selects sales by state, you can make sure that with that selection, he also perhaps makes a selection in a field, or he locks the field, or he clears all selections, right? And then you can also control variables, and you can add as many selections as you want, so you can have multiple ones as well. Don't do this, it will impact performance. However, just so you get an idea, this is a very, very powerful feature because they can control the user experience much better. The other thing that we've added here is conditional show and hide. So the conditional show and hide hides the tab from the list or shows it based on click expressions. And for you who have some imagination around this quickly translate into perhaps some sort of light security. You can specify 10 charts, but not everybody can see those 10 charts. So as a matter of fact, we've created an example here that showcases this case. So we have 5 charts here in our Vizlib container that can be seen here. And we have 5 different profiles. So we have Jim, and Jim is an analyst. And you can see you can only see 2 different tabs. If you go to Gareth, who's a manager, you can see 3. And if you go to Francine, who's a senior manager, you can see all of them. And this is something that you can easily drive using section access, for example, data reduction. So while it's not 100% secure, right? The chart still exists there, the data is still there. It's a way to kind of organize your chart based on user profiles. Yes, so senior manager here is. So that's a container. Explore this. I have seen, a lot of adoption so far. So I'm pretty sure that if you have not already explored this, please do so. It's actually very, very powerful, and we are very happy that this is out. So taking this now to the next level, Small features, but very important to mention them during this webinar to make sure that you're on top of this. We've done some updates on the scatter chart. Some very necessary ones like alternative dimensions and measures, but also an interesting one, which is the support of background images. So if I now go into Click Sense here, and you can see, yeah, a scatter chart I have created here for the purpose of demonstration, right? So we have product group here at the top, one metric on the x-axis, one metric on the y-axis, and just a standard case of a scatter chart. What it can do here is, and that's a new feature, is we can add alternative dimensions and measures. So I specified product group to be my primary dimension. However, I specify also two other ones to be there in the background. This is a click sense feature, which we incorporated in our charts as well. Same also with the measures. We have 4 measures defined here and alternative measures here. So using that, you can easily come in here and you can change the budget to, for example, new customer count, or to bring it back to budget. The same also for the y-axis to change this to new customer count, and so on and so on. So it gives you a lot of exploration ability. And I know that's also possible in the native Click Sense scatter chart, I think. However, what's not possible in the Click Sense native scatter chart is the ability to change the dimension here. So you can say, right, we're not looking at product group, we're looking at sales representatives, or at region name, for example. So that is now there. And this is a feature that we introduced with the bar chart, scatter chart, and that will become available in the heat map and pie chart in due course. So that's like kind of a library update that we are introducing here. So besides of that, we also had the requirement to say, right, if somebody hovers over a single point, we want to show more than these 3 metrics. So you have the ability to specify a 4th measure here that even supports HTML tags, and that is then embedded into your tooltip. So you can actually then put 5 different measures, information, a text object. So whenever somebody hovers over Delhi as a product group, you can see more information around it. As a matter of fact, you can even embed iframes, so you can link it to a website or stuff like that. That is then pops up together with a tooltip. That was required by one of our customers. We thought that was very, very, very powerful. Last thing that we introduced, I'm not sure how useful it is, but it's actually, we had this requirement coming from a lot of people, as a matter of fact, is the ability to, and I think you've known this, to specify reference areas as a starting point. So you can add a reference area here in the section, specify its values, and then it ultimately, if I remove now the thing, it colors a whole section, right? And that can be static, this can be dynamic based on calculations. You can define it as you want it. So, but the interesting thing is some people wanted to put pictures there. And we said, right, why not? So now in the reference area, you also have the ability to choose from an image and perhaps select something which looks a little bit cooler. Up to you. Some cases, obviously, it's can be very, very useful if your background picture has some structure or some elements that says a layout, for example, where it matters where in that picture the bubble is located. But yeah, that's not possible. Explore it. And with that idea, obviously, creativity was sparked, and we said, right, what can we do and explore and take our scatter chart to the maximum with that feature? So we created a football app. So this is basically a scatter chart, right? X position, Y position, and the bubbles. And we have 11 players here for England and 11 for Sweden. By the way, they're playing the World Cup now in the quarterfinal. And using our snail trail, you can actually hover over a point and you can see how they actually moved. And then you can simulate, you know, a tiny football match. I know it's very playful, but, you know, just indicates, shows you, you know, what's possible with our scatter chart. And also, you know, the subsequent addition of every single feature that adds up to something, you know, very powerful. I think this app is available for you to download as well with the example app. Explore it, have fun with it. And yeah, always share if you have some cool examples. We'd love to see how you implement our charts with that particular feature. Jumping quickly into the bar chart. Over here, we've done, so the bar chart, we've done one time, I would say tiny change addition but was a very challenging one to implement, and it was a basis for the future combo chart that hopefully will be about to release in the next couple of months. So the idea was secondary access. So you know the way. I need to go out of edit menu. So the idea is that you have two metrics on the bar chart, however, on two different axes. So let me drag in the bar chart, pick a month as an example, it doesn't be something crazy. I say give me budget as a metric, the bar chart is created immediately, and you can add budget as a percentage, however, now. Now, naturally, percentage is obviously much smaller number than the actual volume. So you can put this now on the secondary axis. And you can see, for example, now on the right-hand side, the budget in percentage, and on the left-hand side, the budget in sales. So that's actually something that we wanted to support. And the difficulty was, it sounds simple. The difficulty was make sure that all different kind of cases were supported. So you can say, right, let's look at this now in horizontal mode. Let's look at this left way, right way, and so on and so on. So, or you can obviously also use the second measure here and display it as a symbol to see whether or not, it's above or below a certain threshold. I'm pretty sure you have much nicer implementations of a bar chart yourselves, but it just shows you can show two different metrics there, and this will ultimately become the basis for a combo chart. So that is now available, and yeah, explore it so you can see that existing charts are being improved as well. Now, almost to the finale, our biggest and most challenging but also most valuable extension we've released so far is the Vizlib pivot table. So the Vizlib table was a big success, and for customers who are on this call, I'm pretty sure it was one convincing argument to go with Vizlib. But as we always promised, the story doesn't end with the table. We always improve our library, and we have our roadmap, and we deliver on what we promise. So we have very glad to say we have released the pivot table that is now available to you for download and for exploration. So let me jump right into it. So looking at the pivot table here. So same use and feel functionality and general thinking as with Vizlib straight table, right? So you have a classic pivot table example where you specify dimensions, multiple or measures, and you will have rich formatting options to change the headers, options to change individual rows. You have also control whether or not you want to see the kind of supporting dimensions here that you have typically in ClickSense. So you still have a flexibility to flick around, mix and match between them as you want. We have provided the ability to do conditional formatting. So if a single line equals true, then you can format it in a certain way. And that's important because you can create some very compelling P&L tables using the pivot table. And naturally, you can make selections directly in the pivot table. So it's fully interactive, fully dynamic, and also very important, allows you and gives you the ability to drill down. So let's say, for example, I want to look and include month into my pivot table. So you see it was populated here on the left-hand side. And I can now switch it to the right-hand side and perhaps, leave it there. So whenever I look now at Africa, I can now expand this into the second level, and I can see how Africa has performed over the months. And I can collapse it again. Where this becomes interesting is actually here on the P&L table, where I perhaps have, and these are just example numbers, right? But it kind of should illustrate its capability. So if you have here now direct costs, you can actually drill down and see the direct costs on a product level that then total up the direct costs. And you can see the same thing for different kind of other items there. The beautiful thing is that you have, again, full control. So perhaps you want to leave it a little bit more pre-canned, in which case, if you go to the pivot table settings, again, you can change the indentation a little bit if you want to. You can increase the size, again, full control, but you can also fully expand the columns. So now you see Africa here as a category and its underlying months here. So that is actually, you know, a very powerful feature. And not to end there, you obviously have the ability to switch them around to say, look, this is January, this is the totals, and these are the underlying tables. So explore this. We've just released it on Monday, and one other thing is, and that played a very critical design decision when we decided to start working on the pivot table, was the ability to show and hide measures or even dimensions based on conditions. If you've used click view in the past, you've mastered this capability. It's not possible in the current Vizlib native click sense pivot table, but what allows you to do is to create an example like here, where somebody can pick from different dimensions on a data island, is what it's called, say sales rep region, and then pick measures that they want to look at, and then automatically you create a table on the fly based on those conditions. And then you can play around with this. You can pivot it dynamically and then create your own kind of mini report as you make selections in your data set. And the powerful thing is that perhaps I can choose something else which doesn't have so many nodes. It's like product type. Okay, I'm a bit unlucky with my choice. Perhaps this one here. But what makes it powerful is that a user can quickly pick and choose their dimensional measures, and then go to export and export the data to Excel as they want to. So it could become a very powerful exporting tool as well, where somebody can explore the data in ClickSense and then put it out. This example is available to you, so it shows you exactly how this has been built. So you can see here I've been using first sorted value, but you can use something else as well, or variables to use the calculation conditions. Completely up to you. This is just one example, but very powerful. And I think every dashboard with a lot of data should have at least one of those. Taking this a bit further, I've just shown it. Here's a little bit more extreme, you know, formatting options that are available, the totals can be formatted differently. You can have lines here. So, you know, in my opinion, you know, tables like these are needed, especially in finance. So, and that's what drives, you know, business adoption. And the beautiful thing is that, you know, this is Click, you know, it's fully interactive. You make selections, things are updating on the fly. So a very powerful thing. Have a go with this. And also important, you saw the indicators here that we added as a measure support. You've known them from the Vizlib table already. So we have also introduced them here in the pivot table. You have ability to specify the icon, specify the condition, and, you know, much more. But the thing that I kind of want to say here is that this is version 1, right? We have 2 representation types. This will become more. And what we also want to do is, if I go back to my ad hoc table that I've created here, is to make it easier for you to create these things here. So instead of having to set this all up, what we want to do is we want to provide here, by either on right click or by expanding the table, a data manager, which allows you to add dimensions, pick dimensions on the fly from the whole data model without you having to set this up at all. So a very quick data exploration tool, which also can turn into a pixel perfect formatted pivot table. Yeah, so that's available. Play around with it, and yeah, we're eagerly awaiting for your suggestions, feedbacks, and we already have some features implemented that will probably go in next week's release into Vizlib table 1.1. So yeah, enjoy this, and as I said, looking forward to hear your feedback. To summarize and to conclude our session, so these are the most major features that we have released, and notable ones. Not bad for a month and a half in that sense, but the question is, you know, what's next and what will come in the future, in the near future, again in the next month or so. So this is a roadmap. Some of you are already familiar with that. So the latest chart we released is the Vizlib pivot table. So 15 in total. And happy to say, you know, the Vizlib table and the pivot table are both out there. But far from done. So as I highlighted, we aim to have at least, you know, 20, 21, 22 extensions by the end of the year. And we have already on our roadmap the next one to be the Vizlib KPI object. So we have some specific requirements and ideas how we want to implement this. So that'll be the next one, hopefully for August, beginning of August. We have some people going on holiday, so that might affect it. But don't worry, right after sheet menu, combo chart, waterfall chart, line object, slider. So these elements, I know they've been sought after. You've been shouting for them. We're working on them. We're hiring. We're getting more people on board. This is all getting greater. And then ultimately, you know, just to also say, that's not where our roadmap ends, right? So we do regular updates and feature releases to existing charts. I highlighted the pivot table, which will have the data manager, hopefully before November. But you know, after we tick all these, you know, basic and most useful things off, we will then start, you know, next year probably start exploring some really cool charts or capabilities like alerting, write back, commentary, and these kind of things. Again, on a library level, right? So not on individual charts. There should be something that will be shared and for a maximum value add. So yeah, with that, concluding the webinar, like what we have to present. I'm open for questions, and I would highly encourage you to ask some questions so I can test the new tool that we're using to see if that is working very well. So I think there is a chat box somewhere on your right-hand side, and if you type in a question, I'll be more than happy to go into it and answer it. If you're shy or if you want to have a think about this, you know, this is how you get to us as well. You know, either send us an email to support@vizlib.com, tweet to us as well, or write to us on our website. Most of you will know we are very responsive and always eager to hear what you think. So, all right, we already have some questions. Just give me 1 second. I need to expand them to be able to see them. I have plenty of questions actually. Sorry, I didn't realize they were there. So first question is the action is only the action only going to introduce on the container object, or is this going to be available on all Vizlib extensions? So that is a very good point, and we have some interesting, you know, thoughts inside within R&D in discussing about this. So obviously actions trigger, you know, selections, and they add an overhead. And sometimes we've seen this with our text object, that people have been using actions and abusing actions to achieve functionality that should be done differently. In the container, we feel it makes sense to have that action. It also makes sense to have it in the text object. We also have the compelling argument to add some actions in the Vizlib table and in the Vizlib pivot table. So for example, if you make some selections, change the sheet, right? So we will look at those and we will, you know, if you can give us ideas and suggestions, please, you know, recommend them to us and we will look at them, but probably we will add some action, but not as a whole thing, because you can break and you can abuse Vizlib charts as well. Just to give an example, the container object had actions and somebody built a navigation panel out of it. And then they, you know, and that's not what we want to do. We want to make sure to use the right extensions. So second question is, what about performance of the ad hoc table? So the way we have developed this on a technical level is that we are creating a pivot hypercube, as it's called, within ClickSense. So we have put a lot of effort to make sure that the performance is optimal from a code perspective. However, we will always be limited to whatever Click engine returns to us. So if you put a lot of dimensions, a lot of measures, and you expand them all in one view, you know, the limitation is not going to be Vizlib pivot table, but it's more going to be the engine and the memory limitations, right? We are, however, working very close with Click, so we already got a copy of that. We are stress testing that with them, We had some cases where in the ClickSense desktop we had some out-of-memory calculations with very wide tables. But besides that, again, this is developed optimal, and the bottleneck is most of the time the ClickSense engine in that case. Very important, however, you can always use calculation conditions, to make sure that it's used optimally. We have another question. Support with end printing. So that's part of the June release. So we made a whole exercise in early June, end of May, when we met up with the whole end printing executive team, like R&D team, and we went through all our extensions and we fixed them all to make sure they're working with end printing. And we managed that. So even the pivot table, the one that you see here, is can be printed using end printing. So pixel perfect reporting using Vizlib charts. It's actually very, very, very powerful. And we will do a separate kind of webinar perhaps on end printing only. However, when it comes to version, I think, and I'm looking at David here, I think version needs to be at least 18. I think end printing 17 doesn't support extension yet, so I think that was introduced with end printing 18. End printing 16, I don't think that even works with. And printing 16 doesn't even work with ClickSense, I think. So it's 18 is what we tested it for, and I think that's the one that works. Very important, make sure you use the offline mode of Vizlib. So the customers here that have on-premise, make sure that you install on-premise version, or alternatively activate internet connectivity on your end printing server, and then it should work. And if not, we're here to help and support it, right? So end printing is fully supported, and again, close relations with end printing R&D team at Click. That's the benefit of being a Click Tech partner. You get access to all these kind of things. Last question, a very valid one, and we get that a lot, is what about the ability to export the Vizlib table to PowerPoint or PDF format? And the easy answer would be use end printing. That works now. But the difficult answer is that the native ClickSense printing service is not so powerful or not so technically advanced as end printing. So just to summarize it for everybody, we do not support printing or export to PowerPoint or PDF. As of now, we can't. The reason being, as I said, is that the printing service is limited, and there's some interesting things around that as well, but I'm not going to go into detail. However, our priority was to make sure end printing was working, because that was an easy one, I must admit. And now, after we cooled down with the pivot table, which took up a lot of time of us, development time, and after the accreditation program, which will be announced next week, which requires some time as well, we will then look into the printing to PowerPoint and PDF. We're not sure yet how easy it will be, or if it's going to be possible at all. However, you can have a promise that we will work directly with Click to make this work. So it's not going to be us just testing a black box. We're going to again sit down with the printing team and then work on the solution together. This is a priority for Vizlib. So we recently made a survey, and I think 70% of you are using Vizlib in story mode, and you want to be able to print those stories into PDF and PowerPoint. Just bear with us. So we're working on this. Do we have any more questions from the audience? Or perhaps you want me to show some stuff more in more detail? I got some more time. Feel free to just chat. I think on the right-hand side there is a chat box, and if you type in there, I'll receive the question and I can then answer it collectively for everybody. One thing I also like to highlight is that I've copied the presentation into the handout section, so you can download the presentation here and share it with your peers if you want. So we have one more question around the container object and the section access implementation. So I can show this to you as well, a bit more in detail. So let me quickly open the right sheet. So here we are, right. So here we have a container, and as I highlighted, we have 5 charts here, and depending on, perhaps even zoom out a bit. Yeah, I just want to make sure that the name is shown. Right. So as I highlighted, just to clear the selections, we have 5 charts and we have 5 people here. And Jim is an analyst, so he's only allowed to say sales by product line and over time. The same Anita, right? However, Gareth Jones is managing both Jim and Anita, so he can also see the order transactions, right, in more detail, something that is perhaps only privy to him. The same also for Henrik's, right, which is perhaps in a different department. And then you have senior manager Francine, who can see everything, which is the bottom sales representatives and the top sales representatives. You know, performance attribution, not necessarily something that, you know, everybody should see. Now, the way we implemented this is we used calculation conditions. So each one of these charts has a calculation condition here. And you can see here that this chart is only displayed when the level is either analyst, manager, or senior manager. These are the charts that are visible to everybody. However, some charts, let's say like the top and bottom sales representatives, are only available to a senior manager, right? So the idea behind this is that if you have section access, right, and you need to set this up, right? This is just an example of how it could work, right? But if you have section access and I am Francine Kai, then the data island would automatically get reduced to the value and to my personal attribute. If you are then Anita, for example, you are going to the dashboard, and because of section access, Anita will only have the analyst level access, and then the container will hide the other charts. Very important, however, this is not hard security, right? These are still charts. You need to make sure that nobody can go into edit menu and modify the container, for example. And you also need to make sure that nobody can, you know, recreate the chart using the available master items here. So this is just a little bit like a patch, like a fix that you can do on top. But, you know, for sometimes it's not necessarily always about security. It's also about, you know, convenience and organization of charts, right? Some people should see something, some people should see another thing. So you can have, for example, 10 charts in a container, but depending on the region, somebody sees a different chart, right? Or a different pivot table. So you can do it by region, you can do it by permission as well, or, you know, again, you can also use it for with a picker and using variables as well. So, you know, just an idea to help you organize a little bit your dashboard. And that was actually suggested by one of our customers when we showed them the container. They're like, okay, we can use this for section access. I'm like, that's a brilliant idea. So cool. Let me see if we have one more question. Right, so we have one more question. Do we have background image support on heat map? We don't. And we don't because we haven't thought about it or hasn't been raised with us. Obviously, the value of the heat map is naturally the ability to have the whole section, so everything that you see on the screen, positioned with a tile, right? So perhaps I can open the heat map here that we can have a look at. So, you know, if I would suggest, I'm not sure how a background image, for example, in this case would become useful, right? For example, here, but, you know, if you can provide us with an example and we like it, I think it's relatively easy to add. So yeah, please share your ideas. We are, you know, very open to them. But again, you know, we make sure we implement what makes sense. We don't want to, you know, destroy the meaning of a heat map or deviate from it, or eventually what could happen is, you know, abuse the heat map to become an image display rather than an actual heat map. But yeah, if you have a compelling example or use case, share them with us. We like these things. Yeah, cool. Thank you very much. Then with this, I'm concluding the webinar, everybody. We will do this on a monthly basis, half an hour, I think. We took 47 minutes now, plus, you know, I think it was a very, very good way and also very interactive. And we will then also make sure we make the most out of this, of the functionality, like polls, questions, ideas. Very important, one thing exactly was asked to me. If you have any blog posts, suggestions, or stuff that we should write about, give us a ping as well. Our content editor user would love to hear about it and then write about it as well. So with this, thank you very much. And yeah, download Vizlib, keep following us, keep sharing the love and feedback. And yeah, I'll make sure to hear from you very soon. This session is recorded, so you'll be able to access it later or share it with your peers as well. Thank you very much and speak to you soon, everybody.
Yep.